Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Saturday evening as we have a nice little coating of snow outside my window. Coating to an inch has fallen, and this has been like a really frustrating thing with these small systems like this when they're weak. They can do some really strange things. And over the last few days, all of the models were suggesting that the concentration of snow would be in New Jersey and in eastern Pennsylvania, basically south of Route 195 and basically south of Route 76. And in the meantime, what wound up happening is the exact opposite. Uh, there was more snow north of 195 in northern New Jersey and in extreme southeastern New York and over Long Island than there was when you go south of 195. And this is just the way the game is played. So we're going to have snow for a little while longer. This is the HRRR model, which has this moving out of here shortly. Within the next couple of hours, it's pretty much done. And then the wave moves out to the east. At least that's what we hope happens. Let me just go back one model run so I can go a little further. And, it kind of takes it and it's gone. You can see the wave moves away. Meanwhile, by the way, for the game tomorrow at Kansas City, they're going to get freezing rain for a good portion of the morning into the early afternoon. Maybe the temperatures will go above freezing after that, but it's going to be tough. This is a fairly widespread area of freezing rain that's being indicated for much of Kansas into much of the northern half of Missouri, and then going all the way back into the western part of the state, and then we've got a little bit of snow over parts of Colorado. I want to spend my time tonight, though, focusing on the long range, and we touched upon this yesterday. Everything seems to be on course for a pattern change, which is beginning really now. It's going to take about a week and a half or so, a week or so to play out, maybe a little bit longer. But I'll just back it up a little bit, and you can see the pattern that we have right now. There's still a flow of cold air initially that's here out of Canada, and you can see it there. And you've got this, the continue active jet stream. There's a ridge, a flat ridge that's sitting in the eastern Gulf of Mexico that's stretched out east-west. So from here, what happens is that we get, let me get this thing to move again because it doesn't seem to want to. So we're going to watch this evolve. Now you're going to see a couple of things happen. First off, that flow from Canada gets cut off as we go through next week. And as we get into the middle of next week, we have a bit of a trough here. So there'll be some wet weather coming into the eastern part of the United States. You still have more energy. And by the way, you have this very deep upper low that's sitting over Alaska. And that's forecast to dive into the west like we've seen quite a bit of in the last 6 weeks. This looks like another big event potentially for the western part of the United States. And you can see the ridge pops up here in the east. But you can also see there's a bit of a upper low, that upper air storm that's just east of Maine. And that's probably going to at least open the possibility of seeing some colder air draining down late next week or during next weekend in the Northeast and possibly the northern mid-Atlantic states. I'm going to back up one run to show it to you a little better. And actually, on the new 18Z run, this upper low that's in New England is stronger. That's going to be important in terms of the short range outlook. But if you watch what happens to the overall progress of the upper pattern, you get rising pressures going on all through Canada. Another deep trough sets up now in the middle of the United States. And then as we move toward the latter part of next week, you suddenly have, and this is what models have been telegraphing for a number of days now, you suddenly have a vortex sitting in south central Canada, and that flow from Canada is opened up again. You also have this very active Pacific jet. So there'll be weather systems coming into the west, and by the way, continuing to bring some serious drought relief to California. They got really a great dent into the drought with the system they had this week, and they're going to have another one with the system next week and beyond. So this drought may be if it's not coming to an end, it's going to get a really big denting and a lot of help going on in the western states. But this is the setup that we are forecast to get to toward this is January 30th now. So we're talking about the very end of January and going into February. I think the longer term questions are going to be what happens up here, up in Canada and in the Gulf of Alaska. You've got a ridge building up toward Greenland, and you've got this upper high that's on the other side near Alaska. And the question is going to be whether these two kind of merge in a way so that you have higher than normal pressures up to the north and lower than normal pressures to the south in the upper atmosphere. Because if that's the case, then you're going to have displaced cold air coming down into the United States. And if that pattern holds, if that block that I'm showing you, this would be a block in the atmosphere. If that holds, that would mean that the pattern change is not going to be something that lasts more than a few days, but maybe something that lasts for a few weeks. I'm going to jump to the European model today because I want to show you on the European. One of the primary differences with the European model is that it keeps wanting to build this block in a slightly different way in the shorter term, which would be later next week into next weekend, where it wants to focus it in south central Canada. And as a result, I mean, you still have this storminess here that goes along, but what this allows is for some cold air to drain down from southeastern Canada into the northeastern part of the United States and into the mid-Atlantic states. This was something that the model actually showed quite well yesterday. It sort of backed off a little bit on it today, but it may go back to this idea over time. We'll just wait and see. I think that could complicate the short-range forecast later for next weekend in a number of ways, not necessarily by precipitation, but perhaps more along the lines of temperature, because it might prevent it from getting too warm. And I think the indexes, when we look at the indexes with regards to blocking and everything else, let me just show you what those signals are, because they are positive when it comes to wintertime weather, or growing more positive. One of the things that happens, the increase in blocking on the Atlantic side is causing the North Atlantic oscillation to go negative beginning early next week and taking us right toward the end of January, and then it goes slightly positive after that, but we'll have to see if that's the case or not. The Eastern Pacific oscillation, which I regard as more important with respect to cold air, is off the wall positive, which would not favor cold air coming into the east for this week. But notice it collapses back to neutral, and then it's only slightly positive or close to neutral after January 24th. So this is this would be a slight positive, I would say, to at least keep temperatures down near average, or maybe slightly below. We'll have to see how the short range sets up. And the other important change is the Pacific North America Pattern Index, which has been off the wall negative because of all the action going on in the West, now goes strongly positive toward the end of the month. And this is an index, when it's strongly positive, is a good indicator of the potential for storminess. Now, whether it winds up going in that direction or not remains to be seen. But that is a short range problem and not a long range problem. So we'll just take a look and see. I'll show you what the model did in terms of the surface, so you can get an idea of what it wants to do, at least. I'll start with the new GFS, which is only about halfway out. And here's our system for tonight. Here's that system, into Kansas tomorrow, which actually still has freezing rain in Kansas City by tomorrow evening, and then it gradually changes over to rain tomorrow night as that low moves up into the western lakes. We get some rain here beginning on Tuesday and lasting into a good chunk of Wednesday before it pulls out. And you can see the high, by the way, when I was talking about the cold air draining, you can see it here a little bit. It's trying to build a high southward along the coast, a bit of a backdoor front perhaps that tries to come through. You've got quite a bit of storminess out in the western part of the United States. Again, this looks like it could be another powerhouse in terms of snow beginning on Wednesday in California and in the Sierra Nevadas. And, there's quite a bit of rain that extends all the way south into southernmost California and into Arizona. So again, another big drought denting event looms for the western part of the United States. There's not as much action up in the Northwest. There's a little bit early. There's some early on, and then it gradually turns colder, and then it has a really a fairly deep low that comes inland near San Francisco later next week, next Saturday. So that's what the new GFS has. I'm going to just jump back to the old one so we can take it out for the second half of this period. And you can take it from here, and you can see, it starts to has one more storm, like storm system that goes to the Great Lakes, and then after day 10, it starts to get cold. It actually does have some kind of low coming up up the Appalachians around January 27th, 28th. I think there's probably a signal around, say, January 27th, which is my birthday, to January 29th, somewhere in there. If the models are playing right, there'll probably be some kind of a storm system in the east, and then after that, it gets very cold across the eastern two-thirds of the United States, with a high coming down and lots of cold air piling in. So this is what we have to look at going forward, folks. I think we're going to watch this evolve. I would just caution that, you may not just be looking at my stuff, of course. You're looking at other people's stuff and seeing other things on the internet and on Facebook and so on. There is no guarantee that this. I think it's probably going to be correct on the idea of it turning colder. Whether it's correct on the idea of turning stormy or not, I think is another question. And there's nothing that says that we can't go from the pattern that we've been in to a cold and dry pattern. That is certainly a possibility that we could wind up being cold and dry. The storminess does not necessarily come with the change over to colder temperatures. So we're going to have to evaluate those two elements, those two parameters, together and separately, because you could have the pattern change you want and the pattern change you get are two different things. But from the standpoint of wintertime weather, I think what the models are doing continue to be rather encouraging, and it could mean for a very active second half, but a few things have to come together. Certainly the PNA, the Pacific North America Index, going positive is a sign that it may be stormier. The other two indexes are straddling the neutral line to slightly negative, to slightly positive at times. So we're going to have to evaluate these things as each event occurs. So check out my latest posts on the website, meteorologistjoechaffee.com, and download my app. Subscribe to my forecast for $1 a month for New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, and Eastern Pennsylvania. And for the New York area, it's for New York City, and for Southeastern New York for the Hudson Valley. The link is up there if you're interested. Go ahead, and if you've watched my video up until right through the end, I'm guessing you may like it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, which doesn't cost you a dime, and every time I put a video up, you'll be notified that there's new weather to look at. Have a great evening, and be safe if you're in the New York, Long Island, Southern Connecticut area with the snow that's going on.